morning. Welcome to Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive, survive, and adapt to the new normal. I haven't seen you guys since last year. I know that joke never gets old. But if you've joined us here before, you know that we cover all things financial literacy and education as it relates to your business and your day to day life. Today, we're going to cover a conversation around webinars, which some folks have different names for it, but let's just call it live events, right? Because we are unable to see each other in person, so more than ever, we need to be able to connect with your potential audience. Today, we're going to talk to Tisha Jack from TCJ Events. But before we get into that, make sure to smash that follow button because we do this very regularly, especially on a Thursday at 10 a.m. So we want to make sure that you get notified every time we go live to have these discussions. We're going to have a Q&A in the last 15 minutes of the session, so make sure to stick around for that. But I think this is definitely going to be important if you have a small business and you are finding it difficult to be able to connect with potential customers, right? So make sure to smash that follow button because this is always important information for you. So let us introduce Tisha. She's going to join us right now, and we're going to dive into a discussion around live events. So let's start with Tisha. What do you do? Let's go into your experience and what justifies you to have this discussion.
Hi. All right. So for those who don't know me, my name is Tisha Jack. I'm the lead event manager at TCJ Events. We're a full service event management company and we work with busy individuals and companies that have a lot to do and need events to support their goals and objectives. So our two main niches are corporate events and weddings. And under corporate events, as of 2020, we are deep into virtual events. So that's why we are here. I have been spending the last 8 months helping clients transition their planned events because we still have goals to meet and we have to just find a new way to adapt and find a new way to gather and still get everything done.
And I think it's interesting because you have to be able to also work with your clients remotely as well, because
Yes,
basically the entire setup has to be online.
yes,
And you have to transition from I guess we would call traditional events now because
yeah,
it's almost as if, when you hear your parents saying back in the day, back in the
right.
day when
Long
you
time
had
we used to
to.
do events like this. Yeah.
And what would just sort of going back in the day, what was the
Mm.
most popular event location that you manage events? Physical location.
Um, on the corporate side, I would definitely say the hotels, Hyatt, Hilton, more Hyatt than Hilton, because it comes with a lot of the boxes that we have to check. As I said, because I wouldn't go into the wedding side because we're here to speak more on the SMEs, which is more the corporate level, right? But apart from that, outdoor venues will always be trending, and especially now, because it's the safer way to gather if we do have persons gathering physically. So um, outdoor venues, yeah, I have a favorite, Waterville Estate.
Okay, and
No
and
fun,
and
yeah.
that's interesting because I will get into the digital side of it first, but we want to just
Right,
cover what it looked like pre COVID
right,
19, and you mentioned a space that I don't know about, so I'm sure you
right,
are aware of so many spaces in
yeah,
Trinidad and Tobago that folks
yeah,
won't even think about
yeah,
because by default they think about in Port of Spain. Um,
yeah.
so you so you would have the majority of your events. Where in Trinidad would you have events outside of Port of Spain?
I was going to say everybody's coming into Port of Spain. So, outside
Mm,
of Port of Spain, Center of Excellence is a popular one for those of us who have to use the east. Um, if we have to head south, Um, there are a couple. Oof, now you're jogging my brain to figure out who to call and who to think.
I know it was a whole year ago. It's just like a year feels like
No.
10 in these times.
Yeah, because really and truly, a lot of the corporate events tend to be Port of Spain. So the hotels and the smaller meeting rooms, and then if we have persons wanting to come out of Port of Spain, Center of Excellence is usually the go-to, again, because of the size and the amenities that it offers. If you head Central South, you're talking more like banquet halls. One of the chambers has a meeting hall down there, Cuba Chamber of Commerce. So, but most times people are gathering east into Port of Spain predominantly, yeah.
Okay, so let's come into the now and have this discussion around webinars because straight off the bat, pun intended,
Straight off the bat, yeah.
you don't have that physical location cost. That
Yeah.
is gone. That is non-existent, right?
Yeah.
And that usually, I mean, in my limited experience with events, is usually a majority of the budget, correct?
Uh, a, a huge percentage, yes. I wouldn't say majority,
Okay.
but a huge percentage, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to putting on an online event,
Right.
where do you start in terms of okay, we have social media platforms, we
Yeah.
have cameras attached to our laptops.
Yes.
Let's start
What I'm
with
doing now.
exactly. So, I feel like it's more accessible, but I
Yeah.
also don't think we are adopting the webinar format to businesses quick enough.
Yeah.
So the first question I'd ask you is, as an SME, where do you think the SME owner should start
Huh.
before they start planning this webinar? I mean,
Yeah.
besides reaching out to you to host it, of course.
As I tell all clients, regardless of the size of the event, you need to understand what is the objective you want to get out of it. So especially with SMEs, I say, why do you want to do this? Like, what do you want to get out of it? Are you trying to create leads for a product that you have? Are you trying to generate some much needed revenue? Are you just trying to position yourself as a thought leader? So you just want to share information. So it's really to understand firstly, like why you can have more than one objective, but understand why you want to do it. Because as we talk through things, you will see that I'll keep coming back to based on why you said you want to do this, this is what you have to do to help you achieve that. So I think getting clear on what do you want to get out of the event, why you're hosting it, is ultimately the first step. Pen to paper, what is the reason behind, or why are you going to put yourself through this work? Because it's work. Why are you going to put yourself through this work to, to, to put on an event? And once we get that clear, things start to flow smoothly after that.
That is so interesting because in my space in marketing, it's the same thing because a lot
Yeah.
of people have ideas, but it doesn't necessarily correlate with the audience that is now, and our audience now is extremely different than they were in 2019. We are
Yeah.
different people.
Yeah.
We have been through
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
And
Mentally, everything. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
objective is so important. So after
Yeah.
you've gone through that and you've identified this is the core objective for the business,
Right.
what time of the day would you suggest somebody host a webinar? Because in the back of my mind, and this is selfish of me, I'm like, nobody going anywhere. Where you
Right.
going? You no line to go
Everybody's
to.
home. Right.
Like, come on, man, you have time on your hands.
Right.
At the same
Yeah.
time, people have so much things to juggle. Kids working from home, you're
From
working
home.
from
Yeah.
home, management of your time. So when do you think is the best time to host a webinar?
You actually tapped on it a little bit just now. It's also important to understand who are the people you want to attend this webinar. Because depending on your audience, that is actually going to direct the time of day. So for example, if you're targeting moms, I don't know, during the day was not going to work because they're probably homeschooling, balancing their own work, And then even by 4 or 5 when school is done, they're probably exhausted mentally and need a minute or an hour or 60, right? So depending on the who your audience is, you have to think, okay, if I was this person, what am I doing? What am I probably doing at this time of the day? It doesn't hurt to also just ask, poll, random question. Hey, if I'm doing this event, what is the best time for you? Most of SMEs are on social media, so throw up a random poll on your page. Say, I'm thinking about doing this. If you are to attend, what is the best time for you? So it's always important to keep your audience in mind. Before pre-COVID, if you were planning this, people would have been at work. So they're looking forward to taking time off from work because it's something related to work and they don't have to be in the office, so they will happily run away to come to something physically. Now, everybody's faces are hodgepodge and meshed up, and so it's taking all of that into consideration when you're deciding on the time of day.
That's such an interesting point with the getting away from the office. And I forgot about that as well because
Yeah,
I was also that person when I used to
yeah,
work at a tech company, but also as someone who used to work with a marketing department and we host events. People had nothing to do with the event. They had no interest. Their position in the company had nothing to do with content of the event. But because they got the opportunity to leave the
to
office,
leave. Yeah,
they
and
would
a free meal
register for the
probably,
event.
and a
Yeah,
and a free meal.
I mean, I'm guilty.
So,
I don't even gonna lie. I'm
we're
guilty. I'm
keeping
like,
it
free
honest.
food?
We are
I'm
keeping
there.
it honest. Exactly. Exactly.
I didn't even think about it like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely incentivized to get up and leave your office. So
Yeah.
that incentivization is so important. And
Yeah.
leading into that, how do you get people to come to your event? Because I find a lot of the times, because we are a small island and we tend to rely on our friends and friends and a network, but
Right.
how do you market to people outside of
Oof.
that network? Because you want to get people to register, because
Yeah.
even now I just feel like people are burnt out with the amount of Zoom calls they're on.
Zoom
So
fatigue is
how do you
real.
get
Yeah.
folks? Yes, yes, that's an
Yeah.
actual thing now, Zoom
It's an
fatigue.
actual
So
thing. Like if you Google it, it's an actual thing. There are remedies for it because it's an actual thing.
it's
Yeah.
so fascinating. It's all
Yeah.
these different
Yeah.
terminologies we would have never used in
Yeah.
2019. So
Yeah.
what suggestions would you give to people to market their webinar?
Um. So again, it goes back down to who your audience is. Where is your audience? Are they browsing online? Are they in groups? Are they, part of email list? Like, so again, understanding who your audience is will help you and where they are. That's where you go to market. Getting people to register. I'll say this: there's a direct but there's a clear differentiation in terms of registration numbers for events that are free versus ones that are paid. Um, Ones that are free tend to see, quick sign-ups because it doesn't, it looks interesting. You don't have to think hard because there's no real commitment required and people are signing up, and we'll talk about that. So I think you're going to ask me that. But just to stay on the where do you market, it's I think just understanding where your people are and what is the best way to reach them, and then what is the quickest way for them to convert, or what is the quickest way for them to register. So you don't want to share the information and then make it super complicated for them to actually register, or make it super complicated for them to get information. So you're sharing your what is the event, what is about, why should I attend, like what do I get to benefit from this. I think now with so much information going on, people just need to get to the point quickly so they can decide right then and there if it's something that they're interested in. Maybe they can just share it with a friend, So even me with my business, I have to now find a new way to even market because again, it's like information overload, So I think just being clear and getting to the point and reaching your audience where they are comfortably, that is going to be one of the main ways to get started on the marketing. and just
That point.
asking for help.
Yeah, that's hard for a lot of us, inclusive of
Yeah,
me. Um, so you mentioned about registering because when something is free, it's easy to just click register, and a lot of
yeah,
these platforms now just integrate it so your social profile becomes registered.
yeah.
However, that doesn't necessarily mean when the time comes and they get the
They're gonna
reminder
show up.
email
Oh
that they're
yeah,
going to show up.
oh yeah.
So, what is a good gauge for an SME owner to say, okay, based on these 10 signups, I'm probably going to get one person show up? Like,
You're probably
what is a good gauge there?
you're probably gonna get five. My gauge is always 50% because there are two things happening. One, people register because, as I said before, because there's no commitment. Two, they might be genuinely interested, but life happens and they're no longer able to join because, as I said, we all balancing a lot. And then
Mm-hmm.
three, they register because they tell themselves, I know I can't attend, but I'm probably going to be able to catch the replay because you're going to send me a recording. So I'm registering to be able to get the information later. So you as a person planning have to have all these situations or all these outcomes in your mind. What am I going to put into my event that's going to make people create what we call FOMO, fear of missing out? Like, what am I going to put into my event that's going to make them want to be there live? Like, if you don't come live, you're going to miss X, Y, Z. And I think that's the direction that we have to start heading because understandably, when COVID happened in March, everyone went online. Webinars were left, right, center, up, down, in between because it was the only way that we knew to reach the people. Zoom was fairly common, it was comfortable, so it was easy to set up a Zoom. We're doing it for meetings, we're doing it for events, and by August, September, everybody's like, oh my God, I can't take another one. So what are you going to do different going forward? And that's the challenge. If nothing else I say today, what are you going to do different? What are you going to do to encourage people to actually attend in real time? To help us get back, well, get us close to, I wouldn't say get back, but get us close to that live event feeling that we have or loved and dearly miss.
You made a point about the replay, and I find that is quite an interesting point because you have to create content that is for the now because the audience
Yeah.
is now, but also that is relevant. That if somebody watches the replay, they will still be
Just still,
committed to it for the
yeah,
full time frame of it.
yeah,
So that brings me to the next question, which is how do you keep the audience engaged? Because you made a really good point about, that whole idea of fatigue, and there's so much pieces of information out there. Maybe give a singular point, some relevant point that they say, okay, this is a good way for you to be in direction of keeping your audience engaged. Because not only are you fighting with, how many different invitations to multiple events, but
right.
you're also fighting with the time of being homeschooled. They have their own jobs, and then somewhere in between there, they have to live their lives. So
Yeah, yeah,
Netflix gonna be involved there too,
yeah.
right? So how do you? What's a good point or piece of advice to keep their audience engaged?
I think it's always for me. It's always what can you get them to do actively while they're while they're watching the webinar, while they're at the event. This is across the board. Like what can we get them to? If it's one actually physically move, what can we get them to do to actively participate? Something as simple as saying, "Hey, let me know if you're still with me. Let me know in the comments if this is making sense." Like getting them to take action. I think that is what it is. Get your audience to take action. Speak to them. Call out a few names. Let them know that you're actually paying attention. That you acknowledge their presence. People like to feel what you would and appreciated. They like to feel encouraged. They like to feel a part of something. So you if you are the one actually speaking, because sometimes you might be the SME hosting, but then you have live speakers, right? But find ways or ask your speakers to find ways to actively engage your audience. Polls are there, they're great, but it's a click of a button. So if you're gonna have my attention for all of 2 seconds to answer your poll, and then I might go back to multitasking. So is there an activity that you can build into to what they're doing to get them to do something and then participate? So get somebody to join you live, to share, and so that people start connected with not just you but somebody else who's in your room. So I think that's the main thing, getting as much active participation and engagement as we possibly can.
So let's get into the technical aspect of things, because
Okay.
we've been speaking about Zoom a lot, and
Yeah.
it's so easy to say, but it's not the do all and end all. There are
Yeah.
free versions of it, and I think there's a limitation as to how long you could use Zoom. So can
Yeah.
you give us maybe top 3 tools that SMEs can use for their live webinars?
Tools is a strong word.
Well, live streaming
Um,
tools, I should say.
yeah. You mean from a platform standpoint, or actually like getting it set up like what we're doing now? Because I can tell you
I
what I
would
went through
say
to prepare for this.
sure. That's well, more along the lines of the live streaming, right? Because you have
Right.
different social platforms as
Yes.
well as there's third party platforms. So if you
Yes.
want to explain to the audience out there, it may not just be click live on Facebook. It may be external tools that will be able to
Right.
help you drive and collect information about your
Right.
audience.
Yeah. Two important things when you're going in this virtual world. Um, your visual and your sound, right? So what I'll say is two tools, if we have to get physical, will be your camera. If you're compare, like when we're sending out our briefs to speakers, we tell them, if you're using your laptop, don't be afraid to check your phone or your tablet, because sometimes sometimes the resolution on those devices are better than your laptop, right? If you actually have a camera, a Canon, one of those traditional ones, there are ways to connect those to your computer to give you a higher definition resolution. Because your visual is going to be extremely important in this virtual world. And then the other part of it will be your mic. Do you want to get an actual microphone, which I think you have fully? And then, or do you have devices like my headset has a built-in mic, so it should be giving me good audio also. You want to look at those things because it's important to see and hear. And I will push the envelope and say, hear is more important than see, because if I step away, I can still connect with your content if I'm hearing you clearly and properly.
Yeah, I actually had to do some quick learning myself as a SME owner. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
YouTube videos, a lot
Yeah,
of YouTube
yeah,
videos.
yeah, yeah,
And they say, audio is just a little bit under visual, if not more important, because, it doesn't make sense if you're seeing the person and the audio
and you can, yeah.
is broken up. That's
Mm-hmm.
extremely difficult. So let's
And
get
I'll say this
into.
though, and
Mhm.
I'll say this though too, why audio is important, and it's something that came up in I was in a group with some other event producers. Inclusivity is also becoming very conscious, yeah. So persons will be able to, those who are unable to see will be able to hear and still connect with your content. That's why they say when you're doing videos, you can to start to post captions as well, because then those who can't hear are able to still now see, connect with you visually, and then read the text. So inclusivity, when we're producing the content now that we've gone so digital, I think that is also why those two things are very important.
I actually saw an article, just FYI for the folks out there, that mentioned that a lot of the social networks are trying to get that real time closed caption
Yeah,
technology going. I believe
yeah,
I saw somebody try it, but I don't think it was that effective. But
yeah,
that point about inclusivity is so important, because, you know, um, there are folks out there who aren't able to to do everything we can and to be able
Yeah.
to include them into the audience is extremely important. So
Yep.
let's shift across to the opportunities, right? The positivity of being online. And
Yeah.
that means that you're going to have access to an audience that you never had before.
Yeah.
What are some of the trends that you would like to share with the audience out there when it comes to moving beyond the local audience that you thought you only had, but now you have access to more?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like I literally posted on my IG yesterday with virtual events, the world has become my playground and my office. Like it's not an exaggeration. I'm connecting with people in countries. I was in a room with somebody from Lithuania, and I'm like you will never think that you will actually be speaking to somebody, on sharing common goals and stuff. So I will say, um, when you're planning your event, know that you're online, think outside of Trinidad, think regionally, think internationally, because we're all in the same digital space. I can be in the UK and you are going to speak about something that resonates with me, and I want to attend. At the end of the day, um, a financial advisor in Trinidad and a financial advisor in the UK have basic principles. Yes, there are some things you have to tweak based on your audience with culture and all these things. But when you're sharing the information, there are some basics, so don't be afraid to embrace having people outside. And I think that's the exciting part about this, especially for SMEs. You are now open to markets that you would not have been able to reach, or at least in such a short space of time. Um, and then because of that, you now have to, and it goes back, who is your audience? So if you're planning for something and you know that you are open to having attendees regionally, you're going to try to tweak your content that you're speaking to Caribbean. If you know you want to speak internationally, then you might have to have, a speaker that comes in from outside. And now you have access to speakers and professionals that are not in Trinidad alone. So, don't be afraid to network. Everybody's raving on Clubhouse now, but, when you go into these social media platforms as a SME, we also have to be strategic. So, network, see who you can make connections with that can help you get these events off. And you bringing in somebody from another country now opens you up to their audience. If it's something that you can have, that's a product or service that you can service them with as well. So I'll say embrace it for what it is. It is scary. I'm not even going to try to dumb it down. It is extremely scary trying to understand everything and adapt and find a new footing, but embrace it for what it is, and get ready to be uncomfortable, because greatness happens outside of that.
Yeah, I think if you're a small business owner and you've never been uncomfortable, you're not really a small
You're
business
not
owner.
doing it right, right? Full disclosure,
Yes.
and for like, I literally was having anxiety this morning, because if anybody knows me, they're like, public speaking is not my thing. So I had to have a few friends on my one call last night, one call this morning, because they know my mom messaged me, because like sitting here talking to you is a lot for me. So get ready to be uncomfortable, because that's how we're gonna grow as SMEs and businesses, and we are so talented here. I was on a call with somebody with an event vendor in the US yesterday, and he literally said, "Where are you?" And he's like, "That's so cool," and because we can do just as great as happening outside. So it's time for us to step up and embrace it and speak up and own our space out there too.
Agreed, and thank you so much for saying yes, although you're uncomfortable because you're doing an excellent job, so don't worry about it. Um, so I want to talk to you about the industries that have,
Hmm.
maybe give me two or three industries that have an opportunity to expand and grow now that the digital space has become so open. What do you think would have the most drastic change and the biggest opportunity from a localized perspective to use
Right.
webinars?
Wow. I think anybody that is into training and yeah. anybody that's into training generally, and your main thing before would have been hosting, talks and seminars, or going internally going to companies and moving around, teaching them how to do things. Listen, this is, you're saving transport costs, you're saving setup costs. You just need to get dressed at the top. Nobody needs to know you're in shorts at the bottom. Like, I think for sure, people who are in that space, keynote speakers, like this is your time, especially if you're a keynote speaker, and your market predominantly was locally, like the world is now your oasis. I think mainly they are the quickest ones to adapt. Anybody that has to do like speaking or presentations or that kind of thing. And then anybody that has to work on the back end of getting these events set up, audio, visual, graphic designers, um, tech. I just said general tech people. Like, trust me, a lot of us don't know a thing about doing this. And I myself had to learn so much in a short space of time. I have a whole new respect for my production guys who I would have traditionally called videographers. They have now had to step into streaming spaces, So if you're a videographer and you're not offering streaming, like, you need to get in quickly, because you have skills that we need. Not want, you have skills that we need, So not everybody is going to want to, or we've gone past the time where we're flipping up our laptops and speaking and doing things. Like, it's time for us to start producing. Time for us to get, I don't want to get fancy, but time for us to get creative. Let's start producing events that people are tired, that they're going to want to attend to, that we're going to have them engaged, that when they open their laptops or their phones, they're going to say, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. And once you hit them with that, they're going to start to sink into their seat and get comfortable and pay attention. Graphic designers are extremely important, because we have to now visually get you interested. You were asking earlier about marketing. Visuals are now even more important. So graphic designers now have to get creative. People that do animations, because we now want to move things. So I think the creative side of it, on tech, if you're not moving, get on it quickly, because for me to set this up, and again, full disclosure, if you know me, I'm an open book. Like, I called a friend, I said, hey, I have a camera, I want to hook up to my laptop, what to do? I have to learn myself, so yeah, if you're into these things, start putting out content, teaching people how to do it, because we need to learn how to do it. Because this is where we are for a while.
Yes, and I think that is such a cool idea. And folks out there, you get this free of charge. If you are a videographer, start now, because you have a captured audience. If you have people who are just defaulting to YouTube to look for things, and if we have a local creator who's able to share that skill set, you have two audience members right here. Right here, we join in here, we click in, and we attended, right?
It's crazy. The amount of things I had to learn, I'm like, oh my God, it's wild. So I will walk into a room and just be like, okay, camera's ready, song ready, mics up, we working, cool. Now I have to understand what you're doing in the back end, what I need to give you for you to push out as content, because now everything is visual. It's a lot. So if you're into production, generally, if you were producing shows or TV programs, let's get on it, because I've turned into a producer. That's what I am now, I think, because I have the direct teams now, as opposed to, on top of, I don't have caterers to balance, and I don't have decorators to balance as much. Now I'm balancing sound and audio, so I had to learn their language to be able to speak to them, to tell them after I speak, and then translate for the clients, because now they're like, Tisha, what are you talking about? So I have to speak the client's language and then translate and go back and speak tech language, so that everybody understands, and that's predominantly what's been my role now. So yeah.
So I have a quick question, because I'm going to ask about the setup side of things in a minute with the events, but I have a quick question about, do you have any advice for somebody who may not be comfortable in front of the camera? Yes, you may be uncomfortable, like a lot of us are. Some people are surprised when I say I can't. It takes a while for me to get accustomed to seeing myself on the on the screen.
Or hearing yourself, yeah.
Yes, or hearing your voice is just it's different. But
Yeah.
is there any sort of other format outside of the just point and shoot that you would suggest that somebody have their content to relay their services?
I'll say if you're not comfortable, because I will say this because it was been told to me, and don't hold me accountable because I don't practice it yet because, as I said, deep down inside I'm a serious introvert. But I'll say if you want to get comfortable, start with voice. So you can record videos without showing yourself. People will still connect with you. So once you have engaging visuals to support what you are saying, they will still connect. And then do get into groups where you can have casual conversation, so you don't feel as pressured. Um, just so that you get comfortable. If somebody asks you to do something, embrace the opportunity and take it because it's only going to get better at practice or easier, I should say. I'm a lot better now than I was probably 2 years ago. So I'll say embrace it, but start where you're comfortable. Have friends around you that are going to understand where your struggle is and will encourage you. So in that one moment where you're like, I can't do this, somebody's gonna come in the ear and be like, get over yourself, you can do it. So start where you're uncomfortable, but share your goal with somebody that can help you push through and make it happen.
So I have a question about when you're planning your event, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
discussed looking at the objectives. We
Mm-hmm.
started earlier looking at objectives, looking at your audience, making sure you understand your audience,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that there's specific times of day, which Kevin has, I reiterated apparently that we should have looked at this uh, outside of office hours, but don't worry, Kevin. We do this live session and we also have post production and we have really good replay views. So we know that not everybody is available at this time, but that's okay as long
Yeah.
as the content isn't relevant to you, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk about how long should somebody wait to basically plan the event and
Okay.
then market it, because we, think about Tribe. Carnival starts a year before. So that production value is so huge, it's
Yeah.
obviously different. But
Yeah.
also, you don't want to send, I assume you don't want to send an invite today for tomorrow unless your name is
Definitely.
Rihanna, right? so, so if you don't have the power of one Rihanna,
Instant, right?
what's the lead time you suggest for your webinars?
So I think it depends on what is required of the audience. So if it's free, I'll say the lead time like no more than 2 weeks because people are going to register and forget, right? Um, if it's paid, you have to give people time to have the finances available. So you don't want to spring a paid event on somebody, especially depending on what your price point is. You don't want to spring a paid event on somebody who, like in the middle of the month where finances might have been thing. Or they always say try not to do stuff in January because people are coming out of December. So I think the, when you do that depends on the details of your event. Generally, what I will say now is turnaround times in planning when you know what you're going to do or when you know what you're doing. For me, it's been shorter. So I've been able to turn around events in 6 weeks or even shorter, 4 weeks. If um if it was critical, like no way, I'm not even trying to have a conversation with you if that's your lead time. So there are a lot of factors that because it's virtually we can turn things around faster. But if you require your audience to make a certain commitment, so one besides time, they have to financially be ready for you. You have to take all of that into consideration when you're planning your marketing. So maybe if you now come up with something and it's short, you might want to start seeding information, save the date, get ready. This is what it's going to be about. If you know your commitment time is going to be a little shorter. So it's understanding your audience and then what will work, and again speaking to people who may have done it have a conversation with somebody like me and be like, no, that's crazy. You need to give people more time, or I might tell you, no, it will actually work, and you need to do X, Y, Z to make it work. So yeah.
Uh, so are there any particular platforms that you suggest SME owners should by default be on to do these events? So I know we have external platforms, but there's some marketing involved. Obviously, building your
Yeah,
brand is important. But is there
yeah.
a particular platform that's favorable that you suggest SME owners should all be on?
Platform in terms of marketing.
Yeah, so like, because you have a ready-made audience in
Yeah,
social media. Like, for
yeah,
instance, Facebook has now a group chat. You can be
yeah.
chatting a group.
Crazy. Yeah,
I think LinkedIn has one too within the
yeah.
events you can now do chats. So
Chats. Yeah.
which social media platform would you recommend?
The social media platform where your audience is. So, so for me, like my audience is on LinkedIn for sure, and then on Instagram. So those are the two platforms. I pop into Facebook ever so often. So I always tell people, if you send me a Facebook message, I'm probably not gonna get it right away. If you send me an Instagram IG, it pops up. If you send me a LinkedIn message, it pops up. You know, so depending on, again, knowing your audience and where your audience is. For some, their audience is strictly on Facebook, so they need to be very present on Facebook, right? So depending on the demographic, I know the demographics are changing now. Um, Before we used to say age and whatever, but I think again everything is now a hodgepodge. So I think it's just understanding where your audience is spending their time, and that's where you market.
That's a great point because we see it with depending on your audience. So if you're like a business to business, a B2B, LinkedIn is
You need
definitely
to
the
be on
place to
LinkedIn
be.
for sure. Like if you're
Yeah.
not there, yeah,
And it's actually since the lockdown, I've seen numbers where it's expand by over 100,000 users within
really,
Trinidad and
okay,
Tobago. So
okay,
it's definitely obviously it has to do with people looking for jobs as well, so they're job seekers. But
right.
the business to business is definitely there, and then this idea, I see a lot of media, external media, talking about, Facebook is dead, but that's not true in the Caribbean because it's how we connect, right?
I was
So you
about to say
mentioned
I've seen
Instagram.
stats where Facebook is actually higher than these other platforms. So yeah.
Yeah, so you've hit the nail on the head where you said you have to look at your audience because if you're not where your audience is, then it doesn't matter how
Which
popular the
platform you're on?
platform is. If the content is not relevant to them, it doesn't make sense. And I
Yeah.
think having social media is almost like a pre-built audience. If you're able to build that audience beforehand and then said, oh, by the way, we have this webinar, that makes your job so much easier because all you have
Mhm.
to think about is the production value.
Mhm.
And then for the SME owner, they just have to think about the content because you have to break it up into multiple. It's a huge task, right? So
It's a
you have
lot.
to
Yeah.
look at you have to look at the event management, but also the content in which the audience is going to be able to consume.
That.
And I want to ask you about your take on
Mhm.
why events and why webinars, I should say, is not an option during this time.
Not an option. Like I don't know how to twist this one. Not an option meaning that it's almost mandatory.
Yes, because you have a lot
Yeah.
of people. Like I speak to a lot of SME owners. I am one, but also I am different because my experience has been online. I'm a native. Like I
Yeah. Yeah.
built my
Yeah.
business 10 years ago
Digital and do.
online,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
this is not new, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of complaints of all the things that are not happening. So obviously you have people not walking into a store because our hands are dry. So there's only so much hand sanitizers you
Yeah.
can get. And then
Yeah.
I saw in the papers today one of a huge retailers decided to close a lot of their stores because the foot traffic is not there. So when it comes to having an option to connect with your customers, I just
Yeah.
feel like webinars should not be an option. So I don't know if you're in agreement with that, and maybe expand on your opinion on it.
So webinars, and if we have to get a bit, I don't know if it's theoretical, but just understanding. What a webinar is basically a seminar that's online. So, and seminars are usually like teaching events, something educational. Your goal is to share information, to share knowledge on something, right? Because again, everything has been blurred, um, webinars have just become the general term for virtual events, right? And I can go down a rabbit hole talking about it, right? But but there are so many other forms of it, and a webinar in its true sense may not be what makes sense for, say, a clothing store, if we have to use that same analogy that you spoke about, right? So what SMEs, and if we're talking general SMEs, what you have to do is, okay, how would I have traditionally marketed my event, or what event would I have traditionally done to promote my business? So as a clothing store or something, you might have done a fashion show. Okay, can I do a virtual fashion show? Right? So, and the answer is yes. If you're wondering, the answer is yes. Right? So, I had a friend um a intimate store, clothing, female intimate clothing store, and she was about to launch her lingerie line, and she called me and she was like, "Can I do a virtual fashion show?" I was like, "Yes, I'm here for it, and this is what we're going to do." And we did a virtual fashion show to launch her line. We decorated a hall right out of her store. Looked like a nice runway. We had live music. She even got live entertainment. Had somebody come in and sing, and it was live on Facebook. No big thing, right? And she continues to love me and thank me for it, because she wasn't even sure if it was possible and if it would have made sense. But again, she had the right ingredients. Once she shared the information about her product, where they could have gotten it, she entertained people, so she connected with them emotionally. And yeah, it was done, and she's moving on. So I'll say, as an SME, think about your business. What events would you have traditionally held, and then see how can that translate virtually. And if you're not sure, reach out to somebody like myself, and I'm sure I can help you strategize and figure it out.
I like that idea of a virtual show, and I've seen some interesting takes, because the definition of a webinar obviously traditionally has been sort of an well, not even edutainment, more of an education. So you have,
Yes,
this
that is what it
idea
is.
of,
Yes, yeah,
yes, and now you have live events, which
yeah,
has
right.
its own category.
Yeah,
And I've seen companies just basically walk through their store and show people the stuff they have, right?
right.
Because it brings some sort of brand identity to that person, because we're so hungry for connection, right? We're so happy to see human faces, or maybe it's just me, I don't know. But that's such an interesting take on looking at lingerie in that light, because then from there you may see exactly what you want. You go in the store one time and you leave. So it's
Or
it's
if they
not
have
just
it together, you can order it online. It's shipped to you, and everybody's happy. So
exactly.
yeah.
That's a cool idea. Great. So when it comes to the Caribbean market, right? Because I
Mm,
feel like, because we spoke about the international and all the opportunities you have internationally, but what
mm,
opportunities do you have with your business from a Caribbean perspective? Is it any different internationally, where you're connecting, you're with groups in network, but you may have a
mm.
business that has an option to expand in the Caribbean? How can someone use live events to expand their brand awareness and gain new sales?
I think that's exactly what we touched on a while ago. What can you host online? What event can you do online to bring awareness to your product or service or your business or just your client? because we're now online, you are now open to the Caribbean. So I have seen, I think one of the first countries to get it together digitally or virtually was coming out of Jamaica. When I was trying to figure out where we're going with this thing back in March, and doing my research, the Caribbean was not coming up. And when it did start coming up, things were coming out of Jamaica, right? So a lot of my inspiration initially was actually coming out of the US and coming out of the UK and saying, but if they're doing this, why are we not doing it here? So I think now we are getting it. I think now we are realizing that, okay, we Caribbean people love people. So I think we were all just holding on to be like, nah, we'll be able to come back outside, we'll be able to do this again, and reality is setting in that it's not gonna happen. Right? And every time somebody says, no, it's gonna happen and they try, they're reminded why it cannot happen. The numbers are moving. So I think I'm now starting to see the region getting on the virtual train. Some are still very reluctant. Um, Somebody actually told me on LinkedIn, it's blurred because you spend all your time online doing work and everything else. Why do I want to be entertained online? And I get it. You're craving for people, but again, it's what we have. So we, as the producers of these events, we have to challenge and push ourselves. What can we do to get these people, to get people to not feel like it's also a burden to be entertained, because that's not what we want, right? So, Instagram lives have now blown up. I think a lot of that is thanks to versus when they went live. So, Instagram lives have now blown up. Facebook lives have now blown up, and people are getting comfortable with the technology. StreamYard, like what we are using now, I'm seeing it popping up a lot because it allows you to integrate different platforms. So it's a lot of an effort to try to understand these things and try. It's good to know it, but if you try to be chief cook and bottle washer, it's going to become overwhelming. So my other advice here is reach out, network, collaborate, get a team. There are people that have this already figured out, and that way you can just focus on your content, and still help somebody else, butter some bread, because we all just looking for opportunities to make that income that we were making pre-COVID.
So that comment you made about the burnout of getting entertainment through a live stream, what I do is I just switch screens. So I'm just like, this is my work screen, and then I'm just going to go to my entertainment screen.
That is funny.
This is my space, and I'm realizing a lot of people are still trying to figure out this digital life, and I took a while for me to figure it out as well. But you have to have assigned spaces. If you don't have assigned spaces, you just go
That is
mad,
actually a good idea.
So I know a lot of people
don't work where you're liming, basically. I like
that. Exactly. So all those folks who got the sales on Price Mart TV, just shift it, because your smart TV can do YouTube and all these different
that's where I watch them live. For me to feel like, I try not to watch them on my phone. Like, open it up on YouTube. I love to hear when they're streaming on YouTube. So I put it on TV, and I feel like, if I want to get up and dance, there's space in the living room to get up and dance.
So I have a last question to close off.
Sure.
And it may be controversial. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh boy.
But
okay.
You mentioned verses, and I think it's such a great idea. And to see Jamaican artists being globally trending, I felt a sense of pride, and I don't speak the patois of Jamaican. What, as somebody who's been in events industries as long as you have, if you were in charge of Carnival.
Oh no, don't go there.
No, I'm just saying what you would do. What would be the one thing you would do as somebody in the event industry being in charge of Carnival? Right. What would be just one thing, right. Because I also have a lot of opinions on that, but there's not about me, it's about you, and you are in that space and the expert. What would you do to specifically bring revenue during this time?
Yeah. No, I can answer this very easily because I've been saying it numerous times. There are aspects of Carnival that in fact, no, let me start over. Carnival is not Monday and Tuesday, right? So there are aspects of Carnival that can easily, with your eyes closed, translate online. Calypso competitions can translate online. Extempo competitions can translate online. Um, Listen, it's so much that we can. I mean, we can. I heard somebody trying to say, they were challenging to even have like the kings and queens. I think that one might be pushing it because you don't have to gather people because it takes so much to move these costumes. But I think just to answer you, there are aspects of the culture and there are aspects of the festival that can easily translate online. And I think I was hoping, I'm not seeing it happening, but I understand things are rumbling on the ground, so I'm just waiting to see. Because Carnival is really not my main thing. But again, lines are blurred now because I'm just doing virtual. So um, I think if it's one thing, like we shouldn't even lose our artists, our performing artists, so the soca artists. Like I'm excited when I get something and I can call one of them to book them. Our DJs can help us still virtually. Carnival would have been their season. Music is still our energy, and I think music is one of the main things I incorporate, even in our webinar guys, like having music playing before you start, the official things help set the energy in the room. You set the energy in the room. So I think music can still be incorporated. How can we incorporate our soca artists, our calypsonians, and we can still put on shows that they can perform digitally, virtually, and make money because this is their bread and butter season, and a lot of them live off of what they make during Carnival for the rest of the year.
Yes, yes, and I think that's a good
I
note for
just to
us.
add and pay them because I think I was waiting for this part to come up, but I'll just create the space for it. Virtual and digital doesn't mean free. So because you ask somebody to do something virtual, you still respect their trade, still respect their talent. Yes, the fees are not all going to be the same, but there's still a cost and still a revenue generator, especially if people are paying to attend your event. Pay the people that are actually, the stakeholders, your MCs, your entertainers. Yeah. So virtual still has a cost.
Yes. So I want to just close off with one final question, and that
Mm-hmm.
is, what would be an opportunity that you would, if you had a group of SME owners in front of you, what is the biggest opportunity that they have through live events?
Um, I think in its nature, events still offers the opportunity to connect with people and to connect people with our products and services. Now we just have to push the envelope a little bit because we can't touch and feel. But I think the nature and the essence of what an event is still very much there. So I will challenge SMEs to just take a little time and get into a think tank, brainstorm with some friends. Like, how can you still connect people with your products and services? When this started happening, I saw larger companies, what they would have called, they might have had like a product launch. Let's just say you're doing a product launch and you would have invited persons to come touch, feel, experience. Now I'm seeing people, mailing stuff out or doing drop offs and having influencers talk about it. You know, still consider how you can get your product or service into the hands of people or get somebody else to experience it because now you can't just depend on you talking about it. We need a couple of people talking about it. So I think the challenge now is just for us to get creative. Like ingenuity has to thrive now. There is a way. There will always be a way. We just have to be willing to push the envelope a little bit to figure it out.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today. You did an amazing job
No problem.
pushing through as an SME owner, introverted as you are. Thank you so much for sharing your time. And thank you for everybody out there for joining us. It was a real pleasure learning from Tisha, and I hope you did as well as an SME owner or someone who is interested in starting your own business. And if you are new to the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago Facebook page, make sure to smash that follow button and be notified the next time we go live on the Straight to the BATT series. Have a great day, guys, and see you next time.